And we're live. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV. I am your host, Dame Lillian Walker, and we are continuing on today with Chapter 7, Part 2. So for those of you who are following along in your books or your Kindles or your iPads, go to page 170. I believe we're on page 172. How my transformation began, and perhaps some inspiration for your own. So I started this chapter by telling you that the moment when I was sitting on my couch and realized that there was quite a gap between who I really was and the identity I presented to the world. So I'd like to close this chapter by telling you the rest of the story. Around this time that this happened, I was traveling frequently, lecturing to people who had seen me in the movie What the Bleep Do You Know? When I was speaking in the front of groups, I felt really alive, and I'm sure I came across as happy. But in the moment, I was feeling numb. That's when it hit me. I had to show up being how everybody expected me to be based on how I appeared in the movie. Interesting. I'm going to pause right here because it sounds like he was incarcerated by the depiction of who he was in the energy that he was when that film, What the Bleep, was filmed, which was actually kind of a long time ago. I don't know if you have watched the movie. There's two versions of it. There's a short version, which I want to say is about an hour and a half long, possibly 2 hours. And then there's a longer, unabridged version that is actually 6 hours long, which is actually the version that I actually own. So you might want to check it out. Wonderful, wonderful content in there from all sorts of physicists, neuroscientists, doctors of all different types. So he was being held prisoner to that moment in time, but nobody was doing that to him. He was doing it to himself. And that's what the message of this book is. It's we all have the capacity to incarcerate ourselves or to free ourselves. There's no one that is so special that you can't go in either direction, free yourself or incarcerate yourself. It doesn't matter how young or how old you are. And so we all have this innate capacity. That's our free will. You know, we have the free will to do that. So now he goes on to say here, I was actually living two different lives. No longer did I want to be trapped by that. Period. So I'm going to take another pause here, even though it's just a couple sentences, but he took decisive action. He was feeling stuck. I got to tell you, in times of my life where I have felt stuck, and I can tell you there haven't been too many times where I have felt stuck because I tend to see whatever the circumstance is. I tend to review whatever the issue is, and I gather a certain amount. I'm not one of those where I paralyze myself with over-analysis of a situation. I get a certain amount of information, just enough to satisfy my knowingness. I try and pay attention to my intuition, and then I pull the trigger. I make a decision, either yay or nay. And to me, sitting on a fence in uncertainty, it's not cool. I'd rather not. I choose to opt out and make a mistake by opting out that I can course correct, or pull the trigger on something and go forward on something. And even if I find out that that's a mistake, again, it doesn't matter. As long as I'm moving forward, I can course correct whether I opted out on something or if I opted to take action on something. It doesn't matter. And the same thing is true for you. And the majority of the most successful people in the world that I have had the blessing and the honor to get to know, that's something that was really instilled to me from the time I was a child. And when I went to USC, it's part of the culture of that university. We have, a lot of tremendously successful people who have graduated from SC, and our network is, world famous, where people acknowledge the Trojan network because they're movers and shakers from high levels in government to leading studios to leading Fortune companies to you name it. And one of the things that they tell you there is, first of all, to not only forge your connections and to work them, that the time that you're there, not only with your classmates, but also with the professors and alumni, but also that whole thing about making a decision that you can keep on moving forward as long as you're moving. But if you're stuck where you're not moving and you're just, and there are times where you have to just take a pause and take no action and maybe analyze and take stock of where it is that you are. But then you can't stay stuck there. If you're stuck there for days, weeks, months, God forbid, years. And I've known people who've been stuck for like an entire decade, which I can't understand that mindset because I'm not wired that way. But like I've had a saying that I've said for a long time, even God can't steer a parked car. If you have a car, turn on the engine and start moving forward. If you have a GPS, your life is kind of like a GPS. You got to know where it is you want to go so you can enter into the GPS where it is that you want to go. What is it that you want? Once you put in the destination of where you want to go, even if you have no clue on how to get there, but now at least you put it in the GPS. The good news is you turn on the car, you've decided to get in the car, turn it on, and now you're going to start to move forward. And then the GPS will tell you, oh, you might have to make a U-turn, go in the opposite direction, or you might have to go around the block, or you might need to just go straight ahead. No matter what, the GPS is going to course correct you so that you get to the destination that you input here. It's like, that's where I want to go. This is the destination where I want to go. And the same thing is true in every area of your life. If you want to improve your health, then you need to decide, okay, what does that look like? If I'm going to improve my health, am I going to gain weight? Am I going to lose weight? Am I going to get more fit? Whatever your health goal is, if you're ill, are you going to start feeling healthy, vibrant, strong, energetic, energized? Or if it's meeting a milestone in your business where you want to, maybe you're at 6 figures and maybe it's low 6 figures, you want to go to mid or high 6 figures. Okay, then you put that, or maybe you go from 6 figures where you want to finally hit 7 figures and now you have a 7-figure business. And so on and so forth. So you just have to know what it is that you want. Take a decisive action. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to get it, but that's what I'm going to do. And that's what Dr. Joe was doing here. He realized that he was living 2 different lives, and appearing to be happy and being genuinely happy are 2 distinct things. He recognized that he wasn't authentically happy. He was happy conditioned upon him being on a stage talking in front of people, when the environmental externals were feeding him in a certain manner, then he was happy. And when those things were absent, he was unhappy. And he recognized, wait a minute, I'm kind of wearing a mask here. I'm happy, but I'm not really happy because I'm only happy when these conditions are met. But when I'm alone with myself, when I'm in bed at night or in my room at night by myself, I'm sucking wind. I may as well just be, I'm just here, my water and my lemon juice, stirring up my sour lemons. And I'd like a little sugar with that water and that lemon juice because I prefer to have lemonade rather than just water and lemon juice. And I think we all would desire that. Doesn't that make sense? And so the good news is that this is possible. So no longer did I want to be trapped by that. I hope you guys make the same decision. If you find yourself in that similar place, you're going to decide, to quote Dr. Joe, no longer did I want to be trapped by that. No, you don't want to be stuck anymore. You want to be unstuck. You want to be moving forward. You want to be green and growing. So as I sat alone that morning, I felt my heart beating. And I started thinking about who was beating my heart. I realized in one instant that I had distanced myself from this innate intelligence. Pause here. Guilty as charged, heaven knows. I went from one extreme to the other, from being so incredibly sensitive that I could feel and sense not just my own emotions, my own feelings, but I could also really feel the pain and the emotions and the joy of others, and not being able to distinguish the two. That I learned how to close my heart and repress, depress, suppress any feeling that wasn't a positive, happy, joyous feeling. And that disconnected me because I was only getting part of the entire piece of the puzzle. I was negating, and I was wasting energy taking, and anybody who does that, anybody who is not in touch with their emotions, anyone who's not in touch with their heart, anyone who doesn't want to deal with that and either wants to be numb and dumb by taking in either alcohol or drugs or gambling or sex addiction or whatever poison it is that you've chosen to numb out those feelings so you don't have to deal with those things. It could be work. Like for me, it was being a workaholic where I would pull 2 all-nighters in a row, just be really entrenched and focused on wanting to succeed in my business, my goals, and the things that I had for myself and for my family, so that I didn't have to deal with those personal things that made me feel sad, that made me feel uneasy, that maybe frightened me, that maybe unnerved me, that made me worried that maybe something bad, was going to happen. And no, I wasn't willing to deal with that. And so you might be somebody right now who might be finding yourself exactly in that same spot. And if that's the case, the good news is not a problem. Just the fact that you're aware of that in this moment, you can choose a different way. You can choose to now become connected to your heart. You just have to make a choice and decide, I don't know how, because that's how it was for me. Even though I had closed my heart, and I intentionally closed my heart and repressed, depressed, suppressed my negative emotions, I chose in one moment. It didn't take an entire day, it didn't take an hour. It was a moment in time where I said, I choose to live my life with an open heart. I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea how I even accomplished closing my heart down. I have no idea how to open it back up. I don't even know what that would look like, but I know that I need to do that. I know that it's the healthiest, best option for me to live the fullest life, to live a life that's the fullest expression of myself, so that I live a life that is in integrity of who it is that I truly am. I need to do this. So I don't know how, but I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to trust that the universe is going to show me and reveal to me at the pace that I can handle how to do that. And that's exactly what happened. And it didn't happen overnight, but little things started to happen. And then I had lots of things that started to happen that were encouraging, positive, wonderful things that I could have never anticipated. I mean, it was well beyond and I have a pretty creative mind, but it was well beyond my capacity. I wasn't even thinking in those directions. And the universe started bringing things to me. And the only difference was that I chose to live with an open heart. And then I was actively looking for, pursuing, paying attention. And in my quiet time, I would continue to say, okay, I have chosen to walk and live a life with an open heart. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to trust that you're going to show me how, you're going to speak to me, and I'm going to perceive however it is that I understand best. I know that I'm going to receive it so I can accomplish this. And then in due time, it came to pass. So he talks about here, I had distanced myself from this innate intelligence. He's acknowledging that there is inside your heart an innate intelligence, because our heart has a brain that is far more powerful than your brain that's inside this 6 inches inside the skull. I closed my eyes and put all of my attention on it. And you can do that right now too. Close your eyes, put all your attention right here in your heart center. I started to admit who I'd been, what I'd been hiding, and how unhappy I was. I began to surrender some aspects of myself to a greater mind. Period. I gotta say here, even though I hadn't read this book at the time, that's what I did. I didn't think of surrendering. My plea, my ask, my request was, show me how to live with an open heart. At about the same time, I was also questioning love. It's like, what what the heck is love? What does that even mean? You know, what's the use? Is it all just this fancy schmancy fabrication that maybe it's just a bill of goods that I've been sold from TV and movies, and I can't say romance novels because I've never read a romance novel, but is it just like a figment of our imagination? Maybe it's not something that really exists. Maybe the only thing that really exists is the love of, mother to a child. So myself, between my parents, the love of my uncles and aunts to my grandparents, to that of my children. But maybe the whole romantic love thing between two individuals, maybe that's just a bunch of hogwash. Maybe I've got it all wrong. So I was looking to open my heart and really get down to the truth. And so I just opened myself and I was willing to receive whatever was coming my way. And whenever I would receive a sign, I would receive a word of knowledge or some sort of intuitive hit. If I still wasn't certain, because I was doubting myself, I didn't know that then, but now I know that I was doubting myself. I was doubting what I was intuiting. Even though I knew I was really intuitive cognizant, I still was doubting it. So I would ask the universe, ask God for another sign. And God, in all his glory, the universe, the great I am, he's not going to hold back from you. And it's not he as in a man. In English, you have to say he or she. But the great I am, the creator, he's patient, he's kind, he's perfect love. So ask as much as you want. If you want one sign, if you want another sign, if you want a third sign to confirm because you're not sure, you're distrusting of your intuition, he's not going to be offended. That great energy is not going to say, no, I've already given you 2 responses. If you don't do it after 2 responses, forget you. No, that's not how it works. I began to surrender some aspects of myself to a greater mind, infinite source intelligence's mind. So I then reminded myself of who I no longer wanted to be, that person with a closed heart. I decided how I no longer wanted to live based on that same personality. Next, I observed my unconscious behaviors, my thoughts and feelings that reinforced my old self, and reviewed them until they became familiar to me. I want to pause right here because one of the things that I started to notice as I went on my journey of reopening my heart and becoming in integrity to myself and really starting to learn who I truly was at my core, I started to pay attention to the most powerful men and women who riveted me, who really pulled at my heartstrings, were the ones who were in emotional integrity with who they were. They weren't so proud or so ego-centered that they couldn't share, not just with me, but share with the world on their platform, whether it was on a stage, at a conference where there might be 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 people, or maybe it was on TV or wherever else. They weren't too proud, too self-centered, too so ego protective of that persona that they weren't willing to share their emotions and the raw feelings of what they were feeling in that moment. And I remember thinking to myself, it's like, wow, the thing that's really propelling me to take a step forward, to take that leap of faith and to maybe wear my heart a little bit more on my sleeve, which I definitely wasn't doing before, was I saw that their behavior empowered me to do the same and changed me in a sense as I witnessed that. And I realized that's because they're standing in their true power, because they were in integrity. They were in their authenticity. I also, which is kind of cool, I also learned to recognize when somebody would shed crocodile tears and they were acting and faking a certain emotion to manipulate and elicit an empathic response for their benefit. And as you can imagine, that's a real turnoff. And as I paid attention to that, I thought, ooh, kind of a trickster energy. And that's really an unattractive energy to pick up, from someone. And some people do it because they don't know any better way and they don't realize that some of us can pick up on that. And others do it on purpose, which I think it's sad for those who do it on purpose because those are obviously manipulators. But it really, it began a different level of my awareness in terms of how really energy is used and how energy is invested and how we have untapped sources of energy within inside of us, which are at the seat of it is our heart, the actual heart energy center. The organ of the heart actually emits an electromagnetic frequency, which we talked about in Becoming Supernatural. And Dr. Joe talks about that a little bit also in this book as well. So moving on here, then I thought about who I did want to be as a new personality until I became it. Suddenly I began to feel different, joyful. This had nothing to do with all those things outside me. It was part of an identity that was independent of any of that external stuff. I knew that I was on to something. I had an immediate reaction after that first meditation on the couch. And it caught my attention because I didn't get up as the same person who had sat down. I stood up and I felt so aware and so alive. It was like I was seeing so many things for the first time. Some mask was removed from me, and I wanted more of that. So I retreated from my life for about 6 months. Can you imagine retreating from your life for 6 months? Now, I think for most of us, if you hear somebody saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to either go on vacation or I'm going to retreat from my life for 6 months, you would say, that's impossible. That's just not a doable. That's a deal breaker. It's not going to happen. But you'd be surprised if that, in fact, is part of what is required for you to move forward in the journey that you have from now until the grave. And if it is truly in your heart's desire for you to be the fullest expression of yourself and you want to get connected and stand in integrity, stranger things have happened. I mean, none of us could have ever imagined in our wildest dreams that the entire planet would be going through a pandemic, quarantine, lockdown. And yet, as of the broadcast of this video, as of today, much of the world is still in quarantine because of the COVID virus. So many people have had the opportunity to go within and to really find, redefine, and identify who it is that they truly are. And if they really want to go back to doing what they did before this whole thing came down. And some people have changed. Some people are changing. Some people are contemplating changing and doing something entirely different, or maybe doing the same profession, but approaching it in a different manner, or maybe showing up in a different way to their family, friends, and society. All sorts of things are going on. So don't be quick to dismiss that it's impossible. Oh, that's only for people who are extremely wealthy, who can afford to, take off for 3 months at a time or 6 months at a time or a year at a time. No, that's not true. You don't know. You have no idea what the future holds. None of us have any guarantees for tomorrow. None of us can guarantee that we're going to wake up tomorrow, that we're going to go to sleep, and that we're going to wake up fine tomorrow. Not one person on this planet. What we can guarantee is in this moment, I can make a choice right now. I can guarantee the past because it already happened. And based on the information I have about the past, I can recollect and recount the past from my perspective, which if I find New details might change and it might color what I thought were my memories of the past, but nonetheless, those are the only things I can really guarantee. And my power is in my right now. That's the most important time you have in your life, is this very moment. So I retreated from my life for 6 months. I kept up my clinical practice to some degree, but I canceled all of my lectures. Imagine that. My friends thought I was losing my mind. I was. Because what the bleep was at its height, and they reminded me about how much money I could have been making. But I said I would never walk on stage again until I was no longer living an ideal for the world, but one for myself. I didn't want to lecture again until I was the living example of everything that I was talking about. I needed to take time for my meditations and to make true change in my life. And I wanted to have joy from within me and not from outside of me. And I wanted that to come across when I lectured. So my transformation wasn't immediate. I meditated every day, looking at my unwanted emotions. And one by one, I began to unmemorize them. I started my meditative process of unlearning and relearning, and I worked for months to change myself. In the process, I was intentionally dismantling my old identity and breaking the habit of being myself. And that's when I began to feel joy for no reason. Okay, I'm going to hit the pause button here because that's the exact same thing that happened to me. I started waking up, and I was actually in Sicily when this happened. Now, I had times where I had joy, but it was for a reason. My 2019 was absolutely a spectacular year. That year started off one way, and it was night and day, the beginning of the year as opposed to the end of the year. It was radically different. In the first 90 days of the year, I thought that 2019 was going to unfold in a certain way. And I thought, I had planned out certain things that seemed okay. These certain things are in my calendar, major things that were going on. And I thought that was it. And that got blown to smithereens. And I ended up traveling all over the world and all sorts of things. I'm not going to get into this now, but it was a radical change. And I had a lot of life circumstances, which I didn't plan for, that brought me an immense amount of joy. So in essence, I had a lot of surprise, conditional joy that was just placed before me. That was like, oh my gosh, it was like so fantastic. But it wasn't until I was in Sicily, and I want to say that this was September, it was actually October. It was in October. And one morning I just woke up and I wasn't going sightseeing. I didn't have any major plans for anything in particular. It was just going to be a quiet day that I wasn't going to drive anywhere, go anywhere. I was just going to stay in my home apartment in Giardini Naxos. And I was just beaming with joy as soon as I woke up. And I'm like, why am I so happy? I didn't have a dream that made me particularly excited, or, I had a good night's sleep, but I didn't have any reason to be so joyous. And I realized, okay, I had woken up, I had done my meditation, and then I had gone out to my balcony, and my heart was just beaming with joy for no apparent reason. And then I remembered what Dr. Joe had said about having this incredible joy for no apparent reason. So if for no other reason, if you want to just be in a state of joy, of happiness, of bliss, for no reason other than because you are truly aligned with yourself and you're one with the one, and you really embrace love in your heart, that's a great reason to do these meditations. I don't know about you, but just having a state and a sense of peace and calmness and centeredness. And then on top of that, to feel joy, not conditioned about, because the weather's good or because the government is doing, pleasant things, or because the economy, or because your checking account or your savings or your investments or your whatever, you fill in the blank that normally yanks your chain. That's a pretty good reason to invest your time and energy, I would say, on this type of self-care, which is just meditating, is knowing yourself. Wouldn't you agree? So moving on here, that's when I began. He says, that's when I began to feel joy for no reason. I became happier. So that's when I began to feel joy for no reason. And I became happier and happier. And it had nothing to do with anything outside of me. Today, I make time to meditate every morning because I want more of that state of being. Whatever has drawn you to this book, when you make up your mind to change, you have to move to a new consciousness. You must become very clear about what you're doing, how you're thinking, how you're living, how you're feeling, and how you're actually being, to the point that it isn't you and you don't want to be it any longer. And that shift has to reach you at a gut level. So what you're about to learn is what I did, the steps I took in making my own personal changes. But take heart, you very well may have done something similar in your life already. There is just a little more knowledge to come related to the meditative process in order for you to make this method of change a skill. So let's get to it. Okay, so we're going to stop right here because now we go to chapter 8. So he alludes here to the fact that you may have already done something similar in your life prior to reading this book. And I happen to be right now, I've been writing since last April. It's been a little over a year when I started writing a book on friendship. And that was not a book that I planned to write. There's a whole story behind that you can hear about on a separate YouTube video. But as I started to write that book, one of the things that came to me was the fact that I did have to change myself in order to gain new friendships when I was in high school. Because up until from basically preschool, from the time I was 2-3 years old up until 8th grade, I had always been in a parochial private schooling. And when I graduated from 8th grade and then went to high school, my parents sent me, the only time in my life that I went to a public school was the 4 years of high school. So now I go from a parochial private school where all the kids had known each other since either preschool or kindergarten through 8th grade to now all of a sudden I go to a public high school. And because I was very quiet and very introverted and shy, well, in the previous environment, everybody knew me because we all grew up together. And I was even shy in that form, but it wasn't so pronounced until I went to high school, much larger school, thousands of kids instead of just a little parochial school with 350 kids. Now all of a sudden you're in a school where there's thousands of kids. There's, I think, like 1,200 kids per grade. So 1,200 for 9th grade, about 1,500 for 10th grade, and all the way to 12th grade. So you've got 4,000 or 5,000 kids just in that high school. Much larger school. Plus, all of those kids went to elementary and junior high school together in the public school system. So they'd known each other all their lives from the various elementary and junior highs that fed into that high school. So they all knew each other, but I didn't know them and they didn't know me. And so I was invisible. I had a superpower. I was invisible. They didn't know that I existed. I didn't speak up. I didn't talk. I didn't really make eye contact with anybody. I was just kind of withdrawn. And I was really afraid to be the first one to say anything. And school started in September, and now it was the week before Thanksgiving. Nobody knew that I existed. I still didn't really have any friends. And I thought to myself, it's sucks to be shy. There's no payoff in being shy. They don't even know that I exist. There's 40 kids in my first period class, and this is ridiculous. It's like before I know it, the school year will be done and I still will know nobody. And so I made a decision. I'll never forget. It was like a Friday, and the following week was Thanksgiving. And I remember thinking that Friday, that's it. Come next Monday, I'm going to show up. My English class was my first class of the day. And I remember thinking, come next Monday, I'm going to show up. I'm going to say hi to everybody around me. Make no mistakes. And so I chose that moment to make a change. And I didn't implement it until Monday, but I decided that Monday morning, on Monday, when we come back from the weekend, I was going to be a different person. I was just going to start saying hi. I didn't think I'm going to be outgoing. I'm going to be gregarious. No, I just decided that I was going to be the initiator of saying hi to people around me, because I was going to take charge. Monday came, and first thing I did was I said hi to the person behind me, said hi to the two people to the next of me, and then I was off to the races. And from that point forward, I chose no longer to be shy. There was a part of me that still was shy, but as I did it more and as I got great feedback and people were like, oh, hi, and they started talking to me, and usually the other person was more talkative than I was. So all I had to do is like, hey, my name is Lillian, what's yours? Then they would talk up a storm. So it was pretty easy. And you can do the same thing too. So that's it for chapter 7 of Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. As you can see, there are many shades, many variances, many degrees to which you can implement this, but only you can choose how it is that you want to change, whatever it is that you want to change about yourself. So I hope that this has resonated with you, that there's something that you took away from chapter 7. If you have a question, a comment, or concern, let's use the comments below as an open online class so we can have discussions. I'm more than happy, both things. Happy to respond to your questions, and let's keep the energy going, and together we all get to grow and accomplish more. So thank you for tuning in, tapping in, turning on to Love and Money Secrets TV. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that little bell button notification, because every time we upload a new YouTube video, then you'll be informed. As you know, we have all 14 chapters of Breaking the Habit of Becoming Supernatural is officially uploaded now to the site. And we're going to be putting up the videos also for this particular book as well. So thank you, and ciao for now. Bye-bye.